Oh boy, it's a new day, it's a new time, and I am covered in dog slobber and dog hair. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of The Game Changer. I am indeed Nate the effing great. I'm being joined by the ever so lovely, talented, and very victorious, if I may be pun-filled, the one and only VicTori Belle. How's you doing this morning?
I'm good, how are you?
Doing pretty good, a little sore, but when you move around from place to place, you can expect that to happen, so... But, guys, we're doing something very interesting with this show. We're going to be talking about a lot of people's favorite movies, including myself, definitely within the top, I don't know if I would say top 10, but it's definitely high up there. That being Willy Wonka, or as some people know it as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And honestly, you guys, going into this, I did want to talk about the recent rumors and a lot of speculation that's been going on with the reboot or the remake that they're planning, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. But I feel like we need to give a little bit of backstory as to, what the story entailed, what happened with these movies. Were they good? Were they bad? Were they passable? Were they failures? Were they to everybody's expectations, or were they just facepalm so hard it just bad? But get into that a little bit later on. So I remember as a kid, I actually was told to read the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory version, and from what I read, it was still pretty good. I definitely can understand why back in the day, actually this came out in 1964, and it was written by, I have to get the name right because I don't want anybody in there, and I apologize for butchering it. It was by Roald Dahl, who created this novel, British novelist, I should also say, and a lot of people really loved his work. They loved how it was just kind of one of those things that takes you on this kind of adventure, it takes you on this kind of journey. And what happened about 7 years later? Well, they took that movie and they took that and they changed it into a full-length movie. I will also say this, that there was actually a sequel to that one, and the sequel to the original book. And honestly, reading the plotline, it's an interesting story. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, this is basically the imagination going into a different area. Honestly, check it out. The sequel is actually called Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. And it actually takes a little bit more of a science fiction kind of side to it. So definitely go check that out if you had a chance. Go read it. But we're not here to talk about space and stuff like that, because I think we've already talked about that enough. Honestly, I think we probably drilled space into everybody's ears with our talks of Infinity War and Guardians of the Galaxies, so we'll try to keep it a little more down to earth if we can. So, like I said, 1971, we got the musical fantasy family film known as Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Gosh help me, what can I say about this movie? Honestly, jeez, it's really good, and it's one of those things that it just stands the test of time. It's really very well done. The first thing you see is just chocolate being made, and the music just makes it so majestic and so fun-filled that you kind of don't feel bored watching it. I know a lot of times there's probably field trips and everything like that where they watch, either candy or plastic or something like that being made, and it's just like, oh, this is so boring. In the beginning of Willy Wonka, you're seeing candy being made, and it just almost like this majestic deal, like you're just looking out into a beautiful, majestic forest land, and it's so well done. And of course, this goes into the story, which I think it's only fair that I've talked a little bit enough about this. Miss VicTori Belle, why don't you indulge our viewers onto what exactly is the story of Willy Wonka and eventually what would be known as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
I will do my best. I know you're a much bigger fan than I am. So basically it's about this boy who I think he's very poor, and he lives with his whole family lives in one small home. I don't think he's an orphan, but yeah, he's poor. His whole family lives in this one home, and this very rich chocolate maker known as Willy Wonka decides to finally open up his secret laboratory, aka factory, where he makes all of the good treats that everybody loves. I'm thinking it's in the United States, kind of, but we never really know where this place is. I don't think. Yeah, I'm like, I don't think I know where this place is. But so he gives out golden tickets with his chocolate bars, and if you get a golden ticket, you get to bring one other person to the factory, and all the golden tickets go out, and Charlie sadly never won one. It was so upsetting, and he really did try, and then finally they were like, oh, it was a fake. There was a fake one, so there's one still out, and Charlie gets one chocolate from a store. He opens it, and he got the golden ticket. And he's running home, and this scene always reminds me of Family Guy because they made fun of this so hard. Like, he's running home, ow, he falls. Family Guy obviously loved Willy Wonka too, but instead of chocolate, it's beer. But yeah, so then Charlie takes his grandpa and they go to the chocolate factory, and I think you could take it from here if you'd like.
Yeah, so a lot of these tickets that were passed out and hidden in these chocolate bars actually went all around the world. They didn't just go into one rural area that they were in. In the Charlie version, they actually made it more that they were located in, like, I guess, Britain or somewhere in the UK. But throughout both movies, they definitely talk about where a lot of these, tickets went to, where they wound up being found. There was Augustus Gloop who found one, which was someone that lived in Germany. Veruca Salt, who I'm kind of questioning whether she was. I think that she was also British as well, so that was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, so not too far from home. Violet Beauregarde, who was in the United States, as well as Mike TV, who was also in the United States. And all of these kids wind up, as Tori was saying, they end up going to the factory. And this is where we, of course, meet the incomparable Willy Wonka. And he takes them on this just wonderful journey throughout the chocolate factory. It starts with, just some fun-filled stuff, just chocolate room where anything is eatable. You can eat anything, in his words, not mine. Just absolutely a wonderland, especially if you were a kid and you just loved eating candy. It was just absolutely beautiful. And of course, along the way, each of the kids are either tested or eliminated one by one because they are coaxed into something that they really love or just something that piques their interest. And then at the end, it boils down to Charlie being the only one left. Now, during that time, it seemed during this entire deal is that one lucky one of these five was going to get a lifetime supply of chocolate. And at the end of the tour, basically they're told, oh, okay, well, here's the exit, just make your way out. And it was one of those things where you're kind of confused at the end, where it's like, what, weren't they supposed to get something here? And of course, Grandpa Joe, he's just saying like, okay, hold on, I think we need to have a conversation with Willy Wonka. He asks him, when does he get the lifetime chocolate? And Wonka just goes on this outrage where he's talking about how when they first came on, they signed a contract that basically stated all this random miscellaneous stuff, and then basically he just gets mad at them for breaking rules. And I remember this iconic line, and I remember watching it this morning, of Willy Wonka. Gene Wilder plays this so well, where he just says, "You lose! Good day, sir!" And in the end, we also see Charlie basically do an act of random kindness, because during this tour, they get introduced to an everlasting gobstopper, which, to nobody's surprise, there was people that were out to get this. One of the notable ones was Slugworth, who basically enticed all the kids, including Charlie, for saying, hey, I'll give you all this money, this will help you get through life, just remember to bring me an everlasting gobstopper. So Charlie had that choice to take the everlasting gobstopper, give it to Slugworth, everything would be fine. But then Charlie decides to leave the gobstop with Willy Wonka. And of course, Wonka, he's just elated. He's happy. He's saying, you won. You made a selfless act. And that eventually evolves into him giving the entire chocolate factory to Charlie. Now, of course, in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory version, that's not at all what we got. I mean, still everything is just about the same, but towards the end it was just one of those things where Willy Wonka says, like, oh, you'll get the factory, but it's just you. You can't bring your family along, which kind of takes it in a very weird direction, because in the book they had the entire family go with Willy Wonka and with Charlie back to the factory. In the movie, they had basically Charlie asked, can I bring my family along? And Wonka's just like, of course you can. In this one, of course, Wonka has daddy issues, so therefore this created a weird conflict in which Wonka had to confront his dad, and then finally has appreciation for parents and for family, and oh my god, what is my life with this movie? Okay, so let's start off with maybe some of the positive things that we take from both the Willy Wonka version and the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory version. I know some people will say that it's a little hard to do, but in all honesty, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory one is more closer to the book than the Willy Wonka version is, from what a lot of people did. I mean, I think the main thing I noticed with the Willy Wonka version is that the main thing they changed was the squirrel scene. Instead of there being squirrels testing out nuts and whatnot, it was golden gooses, and they had like a scale deal, whether it was a good egg, it's good, bad egg, it goes down the garbage chute and into the furnace and blah, 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 blah. I didn't see too much of a difference with that, but I think that's one of the reasons why people do still like the newer version of Willy Wonka, the Charlie version. But there is still some good to it, but at the same time we could just nitpick about the negatives, and honestly, we are going to talk about the biggest negative from that one. But honestly, though, Tori, what are some things that you remember positively about either Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Well, I kind of have to look this up real quick just to make sure I'm not lying, but okay. I'm almost for sure, didn't Tim Burton take part in one of these films, or am I lying?
Nope, you are correct. He took the reins for the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory one, so he's the one who gave us the Johnny Depp version.
Right. And you said that one actually is more closely related to the book?
That is from what a lot of people have definitely said. Even critics have definitely said that, yeah, this is more closer to the book.
Interesting. Because, I mean, obviously, if we're just talking film-wise, like, one looks a lot brighter, one looks a lot darker, the tones are different. One's a little creepier, Like, obviously, the Tim Burton one is going to be creepier and darker and almost have this, like, overall, like, cold feeling. Like, I don't think I ever felt super warm during that movie. Like, and I say super warm as in, like, the screen, like, lighting up and being beautiful. While in the Willy Wonka version, it just was always bright and happy. And Gene Wilder is just somebody who's going to be, like, bright and happy, even if he is playing kind of a weird character. He never made me feel uncomfortable. Well, the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka definitely makes you feel uncomfortable. He's almost like socially awkward in some way. The Willy Wonka that Johnny Depp played, or I felt.
It is really weird how Johnny Depp really played Willy Wonka in that one, because you definitely can compare and contrast, the differences between the way Gene Wilder portrayed him and the way that Johnny Depp did. And I think that one of the things I definitely noticed between the two of them is that with the Gene Wilder version, he kind of knew what he was doing. I mean, first glance, you don't really kind of notice that. Maybe people can look at that and just think like, oh, well, he's just kind of careless because he knows these kids are kind of bratty and kind of spoiled. But in the end, you kind of see how it all plays out. And it's one of those things where you're just like, well, maybe he planned that to really have it be a test for each one of these kids, where he's basically, he is still kind of warning, saying like, no, don't do this, don't do this. But he knows that there's not going to be stopping them once the wheel starts going. With the Johnny Depp version, it was weird. It was kind of one of those things where it was like he knew it was going to happen, but it was like, oh, well, oops. Like he was legitimately shocked, like it actually happened. And then, of course, when they drew out the solutions, it was just like, well, we could try this. We could try this. It's like, what? What exactly are you trying to... I don't understand your mindset here, except for the fact that A, you have daddy issues, and B, like you said, you're socially awkward. That's all I'm getting out of this.
Yeah. I just remember there were parts where he's just, like, smiling. And, like, staring and smiling. And you're like, okay, dude. But I do have to say... the Charlie in that one, which I got to look up the actor's name. Charlie.
The Charlie and the...
the young boy. Yes, Freddie Highmore, who right now, I guess, if you're watching any TV shows, he's the good doctor. He plays a doctor who has autism. I love this guy. I love Freddie Highmore. He's been in a lot more things. Like he was, what was it? The Bates Hotel. So he was playing a serial killer, a younger serial killer, like before whoever Bates. I'm not familiar with not superheroes. Oh my gosh, I almost call them superheroes. I'm not familiar with serial killers. Oh, that was awful. But one of them is Bates, and the Bates Motel tells the story of like a young serial killer living with his mom, and he plays that, and he plays it very, very well. He's just been on a lot of things. Neverland, so he's been in a few things with Johnny Depp, I feel, before. But he's just a great actor, and he was just adorable, and so like the Charlie you want. Like I thought he did, like, if we're comparing the like who did what, I'm like, okay, Gene Wilder did a way better Willy Wonka for me. But I do have to say Charlie was so just awestrucken by everything. Like you just always thought he was a good kid, even when he did the like bad thing. Like he took something that he shouldn't. He owned up to it, and he's just like sincere. The actor just always seems so sincere and so innocent that you were just rooting for him. And I'm not saying the other guy didn't. I'm just saying he was more of a happy-go-lucky kid, while this kid, you were like, this Charlie, he's been through some stuff. And he knows what he's doing. He's been through some stuff, but he hasn't, that lifestyle and that negativity that he's been surrounded by not having the luxuries of other kids, hasn't tainted his spirit. Like, he's still a good person. While the other Charlie, the first Charlie, just always seemed very happy. And you were like, why are you so happy, kid? Like, your life sucks. But you know, that's kind of just how kids were displayed. Like, back in the day, I feel like that's kind of how, like, if you saw, what is it, with the twin movie?
The Shining?
No, The Shining, that's definitely a twin movie too, but when they swap places, that reminds me of it.
Oh, Parent Trap.
Yes, thank you. I like, for some reason, like, all kids remind me of all those old movies. Like, I'm like, they all kind of seem the same. Like, they're happy, they're singing. But yeah, I don't know. I love Freddie Highmore though, so I could be a little biased. I just remember, like, almost tearing up in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and watching him play, you know, opposite of Johnny Depp. Even though Johnny Depp was creepy, he still accepted him and, like, almost was like, okay, weird older man, we can be friends.
You know, it's funny you put it like that, because I kind of feel like the reverse of what you put it. I felt like the Freddy way of he portrayed it, he was kind of the happy-go-lucky. Well, I wouldn't say happy-go-lucky, but he seemed like he was really the too-goody, two-shoes kind of guy where, he was always being selfless. It was almost like he was supposed to be this kid who, did no wrong and just did not, want to get in too much trouble. But when I look at the Willy Wonka version, I look at this Charlie and I feel like I could relate to him a bit more because he is acting like a child. Well, maybe you saw him more as the happy-go-lucky, just maybe Pammy, walking down the streets kind of kid. I did not always see that with him. I remember so many scenes where he had the reaction that a kid would normally have. Like, when he got a Wonka bar for his birthday, he opened it and he's, has a look of, disappointed where it's like, yeah, unfortunately it's not there. There's a scene that he actually has with his mom where he basically talks about how all these kids are finding tickets, but there's no way he's going to find it, and he's bummed out, and that eventually goes into the classic song that a lot of people know, especially from this musical, is Charlie, where his mom is basically just saying, your day's coming, you're going to have that day where you are, just that shining person. You're just going to have that day where you're never going to forget. You're going to be supremely happy. And you still see a lot of moments where he's just still being a kid. He's disappointed. He's bummed out. He wishes he could be that kid that finds a ticket. And it's not until, the very end where he finally gets that ticket, you see him just happy and just raised like, yes, I did it. I found the golden ticket. Just so happy. And again, we see more emotions in him during the final scene with him and Willy Wonka, where he has basically an inner conflict between him. Does he go with, Slugworth, or does he just do the right thing in his mind, which is give the gobstopper back to Willy Wonka and just leave with, just kind of this feeling of knowing that he did the right thing. So, I understand where you're coming from. It's just that when I remember the classic version, I don't remember him always being so happy, so lucky. I just remember him doing his paper route, and he was, happy doing that. But then when this golden ticket thing came around, that's where you started seeing him be more emotional and acting more like a kid, because every kid wants to be able to have so many nice things. And so many of these other kids, they're so lucky. They're just, either happy or they're spoiled or they're just being like, oh yeah, I knew I was going to do it, whatever. And, for him, it was just one of those things where he was just kind of bummed out until it happened. So it's kind of one of those things where he's kind of that small hero that you're rooting for, and in the end he wins the ticket. So I think that actually also goes into the next thing that I loved about this. Is actually something I liked about both of these films was the kids. We talk about Charlie. For each of them, they all still have their positives. Like both of them, I think both of their Augustus Gloops were pretty good. I mean, honestly, it's just a little kid who's just basically eating everything, which is still kind of the funniest and also the kind of most bizarre thing from the movie. Veruca Salt, I'm a little impartial. I like the original one better just because she is basically that spoiled brat where in the Charlie one, she's kind of more like a dignified spoiled brat where, she's not going to be screaming, she's not going to be yelling. She's just kind of, like, I want this now, and then she'll get it, and then, of course, there's that scene where she's like, Daddy, I want another pony. I'm like, oh, gosh, this is like every parent's nightmare right here. She's dignified, but at the same time, she's spoiled. Violet is the one I actually really preferred in the Charlie one because of the fact that she wasn't just some random gum chewer. She actually made the gum chewing like a competition for herself, and she got recognized for it. She definitely was a competitive person, and that also reflects from her mom how competitive that she can be. I honestly loved that better than the car salesman dad that they had in the original Willy Wonka. That guy just... It's one of those things where you think of a cheesy politician back in the day. He fit that bill. Mike TV, I think I'd call it a wash. I think I kind of preferred the original one, but at the same time... The Charlie one is kind of more modern day, where he's just, thinking with his mind. He's consumed by video games. He's just one of those things where it's just like, I want it, but, this is stupid. It's like, okay, this is kind of what you would expect from a lot of modern day people. But I don't know. What did you think about the kids from both the movies?
Yeah, I honestly think they all, like, the reboot or the new one really played the kids great. Like, they obviously watched the old ones. That's how I feel. I'm like, they didn't seem much different than me, but I do remember Mike TV obviously having to tweak it a little bit to what kids are doing nowadays. And like you said, like, I did like how he's like, oh, this is just dumb. This is too easy. Like, and like kids nowadays having that attitude and stuff. Obviously, it's still, but it's been now probably almost 10 years from that one. But yeah, I really liked all the kids. They all kind of had the exact same feel to me. I didn't feel much different in any way. Their challenges were still great. You still learned something, and that was kind of the whole idea of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, was to teach not to be selfish, not to be greedy. It's almost like the deadly sins, and they're all out there, and you're like, oh geez, like, don't do that, or you're going to turn into a giant blueberry, or something like that, and or you're shrunk down, and now you're a mini of yourself, and stuff like that. It was just a good story, and that's where I guess my favorite, and a lot of people's favorite characters, the Oompa Loompas, come in. The Oompa Loompas, I think, are a big difference in these two movies.
Yes, that we can agree on.
Yeah, because the Oompa Loompas in the first one were obviously different people. There were different people playing each one, and they were, I don't know the PC term to say. Are they dwarves? Is that the PC? I don't know. They're little people? Little people is more of a PC way of saying it.
Yeah, I think that's the PC way of saying it. So.
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't want to ever offend anyone.
No.
But yeah, that, for me, like, that was interesting. Like, they all had their own little costumes, and they, like, came out, and there were, I don't know how many there were, but there were at least a good 10. And I bet they even got more, because in some of the scenes in the first one, you're like, okay, there's a lot of Oompa Loompas here. And they're all singing, doing, like, the cool, like, different dance moves and stuff. And I'm pretty sure, if my research is true, Deep Roy was the only Oompa Loompa in this one.
Really?
Deep Roy is Indian native, I believe, and he is a small person. He's 4'4". He's been in a lot of different things, though. I don't really know. I could bring it up. He's Bound and Down, Storage Wars. I could bring up more stuff that he's been in, but he was the only one, and they just duplicated him over and over and over.
It was weird seeing that, because it just literally felt like he just took one little person and just, like, cloned him over and over again and said, hey, these are my Oompa Loompas, where at least with, the original one, you had, somewhat different sizes, somewhat different facial expressions. It felt like, each one of them had a different kind of personality to them, where in the Charlie one, it kind of felt like they all had the same face. No disrespect to the actor, but it was just one of those things where it's like, it kind of doesn't feel as special. I mean, hey, great, you can do that with CGI animation, but I don't know. It just did not feel like anything where it was like, oh, wow, look at all these things. Like, I think that one of the critics that I listened to, he said, when you think of Oompa Loompa, would you think of them as either this one from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or this one in Willy Wonka? And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, the Willy Wonka version, that's what I probably would think about as an Oompa Loompa. Somebody with, orange skin, green hair, just looking a little bit unique instead of the kind of person where it's just like, oh, where are you from? Are you from, like, India or something like that?
Yeah, he's actually from Kenya, my bad.
Okay.
I just wanted to correct myself, because I thought he was from India. My bad. But yeah, and a big thing that he's been in is Star Trek Beyond, and just Star Trek, the new Star Trek movies. he was the little like little dude that helps. It's not Scotty. It's the guy who has to fix the ship all the time. Is that Scotty?
I want to say it is Scotty, because there's so many times where people make the joke about, Scotty, fix the engines. I can't do it, Captain. I don't have the power.
Yes. So then it is Scotty, and he's the little like weird dude that helps him out. That is always just sitting there like shaking his head or something. He's like, "You're no help at all."
You're not help.
That's the guy. And he literally probably has to sit in makeup for a good 7 hours to not say anything.
I would love if this was like after you're coming out from being an Oompa Loompa, he's just doing that, and Scotty just says to him, "You're not helping." And he just says, "Forget this. I was in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, okay?"
Yes. I was literally the only Oompa Loompa, and they just multiplied me thousands of times.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, it's a way to save on costs.
I get that. I totally understand that.
And I bet they were. I think what I would think they were going for is they were their own like race of people, and this is the commonality they share. But I mean, we all knew it's just the same guy over and over and over again.
And I mean, some people could also make the same deal where they're saying, well, yeah, but that's the same thing with the Oompa Loompas in Willy Wonka. It's like, yes, but they don't all look exactly the same. They all look, different.
You can definitely tell they're different people.
So that's kind of the point that we're getting across. One thing that really stood out to me when I was doing my research, but also when I was thinking back at, the differences between the two movies, was the fact that in the Willy Wonka version, Charlie's father is not in this. I don't even think they even mentioned, what happened to him. Whether, did he die? Did he leave? Did something happen to him? But obviously in the Charlie one, his dad is there. He works at a toothpaste factory. Then he gets replaced by machines and he loses his job. But then he gets his job back because apparently he knows how to fix a machine that knows how to do his job for him. It was a really weird story arc. I don't understand it. But when I really thought about it, I thought to myself, okay, in the Willy Wonka version, Charlie doesn't have a dad, or does he really? Because this also ties into the Grandpa Joes between the two of them. With the Grandpa Joe and Willy Wonka, I like him because of the fact that yes, he is a bit of a stingy guy, and he also can be a bit of a stick in the mud sometimes. But also he tries his best to be kind of like that father figure to Charlie, and it's really, really kind of heartwarming when you think about it because of all the time that they spend together. They have so many scenes where they talk to each other, where Grandpa Joe talks about the factory, where he actually brings up another walkabout and says, "Hey, we got one golden ticket left. Let's go find it now." And then we have the fizzy lifting scene where Charlie's having fun, and then Grandpa Joe's having fun. You really feel the connection between the two of them. It's almost like a father-son bond, even though it's Grandpa Joe. So it was kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't think Charlie needed a father in there because Grandpa Joe kind of acted like a dad himself. In the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory one, I look at Grandpa Joe in that one, and I hate to say this, and I know I'm going to sound mean, it just felt like Charlie took him just as kind of like a favor, just because he worked at the factory. He worked with Willy Wonka, and it's really weird because throughout that movie, it kind of felt like he was just guiding, an elder around an area. It's almost like taking somebody out of their retirement home or their home or out of their what do they call it again? No, maybe it is retirement homes, but just taking them out of their retirement home and just saying like, "Oh, hey, there's all this cool stuff here," and you can't do anything with them because he might break. You never know. But I just felt like with the original one, they at least tried to develop him a lot more. Where it's Grandpa Joe in the Charlie one, he was just kind of there. To be fair, I don't know any other way to put it. It was really weird because it was like, okay, well, this ties into the original, but then I was just like, did he really serve that much of a purpose? I mean, there's nothing other than the fact that it's like, oh yeah, I used to work for the factory, and then he says to Willy Wonka, hey, I used to work here. And that's about it. It's like, can you add anything else to the story here? Or are you just, oh, no, that's it? Okay. I mean, I get it. I get it. There's small tie-in, but he really didn't do that much. I mean, with Grandpa Joe in the original, there's the scene where he's basically yelling at Willy Wonka. It's like, how dare you do this? He's basically, it's almost like he's treating Charlie like he is his son, where he's basically saying, how dare you do this to a little boy, get his hopes up and then crush it. You're nothing more than an inhuman monster. That just makes me think, yes, he's like a dad. This is exactly what you would expect from a dad. This is awesome. I love this Grandpa Joe.
I enjoy, obviously Grandpa Joe is supposed to, give you a little bit of the nostalgia. Like he loves Charlie and he'll take care of Charlie. I just want to say, Charlie!
Charlie bit me!
Charlie bit me! Charlie!
Completely off the subject, but I will say this, that it's really weird that I think that the other grandpa from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory had a little more development to him, because I like how he basically is just watching the TV and he's just saying all these things like, oh, the first person that's going to find the kid is going to be fat, and he's like, told you. And then he sees Veruca and it's like, oh, he's worse than the fat. She's worse than the fat one. You see him just building up in anger. And he's just one of those things where it's like, I can relate to this guy. Because literally it's like, this is good stuff should be happening to good people, not rotten, spoiled kids. And the one scene that I love from him is where Mike TV is, getting interviewed and he's being told how he found the chocolate bar. And then he just says, I hate chocolate. And Grandpa George is going, well, it's a good thing you're going to a chocolate factory. You ungrateful little... And they just cover Charlie's ears so he doesn't hear what he's saying. But it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I can relate to that. It's one of those things where it's like, he's had enough. These kids are spoiled. They're rotten. They don't deserve this. He's just being the one just saying, on behalf of everybody, this is how I'm feeling, and this is how I'm sure everybody's feeling. Somebody please join with me. I was like, dude, I'm joining with you on that. I totally agree. So it's really weird how they do try to develop some of the characters a little bit more in the Charlie version than the Willy Wonka version, which isn't a bad thing. But at the same time, I still question why they had Christopher Lee involved in that. The guy was Count Dooku, for God's sake. He deserves so much more, so much better. He was just there to basically just say, like, oh, well, you will not have candy, and you will have cavities if you eat candy. He's just being this kind of weirdly strict parent where it's like, what, okay. Is this a stereotypical deal of what a dentist parent is all about? Because I don't understand this. And then they have that weird reunion between him and Willy Wonka. It's just like they do a little weird hug. It's like, you haven't seen each other in years, and you're doing like this weird, like, awkward hug like you're meeting for the first time.
Well, because he was socially awkward the whole time.
It's
That's like the whole essence of what Willy Wonka is in this one. Is like, where do I put my hand? Do I stick my butt out? Do I not? I don't know. It's just, I feel like that's literally like what I think of Willy Wonka is when he hugs his dad. You're like, yep, that's about it. That's about it for Johnny Depp. I do have to say, though, all in all, I think that Johnny Depp did a good job. I think everybody did a good job. I think they're different enough that you can respect both of them for what they are. And, like, okay, if you like the old one, then continue to watch the old one. I think it was long enough time that you could have a new one and have it more based off the book, because they probably had the ability to do some of the things that the book said that in the 70s they definitely did not have the ability to do. So it's like, okay, we're going to change this to be something that's a lot easier for us to create on set and create movie-wise, because there's no way we can do this. Can't do a crazy roller coaster ride down that river. They'll just do a nice little boat ride because we don't have the ability to send this boat like, oh my gosh, it's going through tubes, and oh, everybody hang on, no. Like, they didn't have that ability. So, I don't know. I think they both were relatively good movies. And obviously have a following. But as long as you just take it for what it is, and I Depp did a good job of seeing himself as something different. Because that's kind of what, when I think of a Johnny Depp movie, a lot of times I feel like a Johnny Depp movie is a Johnny Depp movie because it's all about Johnny Depp. And what character, what persona he's portraying. Like, literally, like, who is he bringing out? Is he bringing out his crazy drunks? Is he bringing out his awkward? His characters are all weird in some way. But I think it's just, like, reflects in the actor. And so you're kind of like, all right, I can dig it. He definitely did something different than what I usually, like, from all the other Johnny Depps. You're like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, and this also does bring to the point, well, I'll also say this, I do agree with you 100%, is that both of them do have their positives and they both have their negatives, but it all is just a matter of perspective. Do you guys like the book? Well, you'll probably like more of the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie more. Do you like more, imagination? Do you like it to be, pure nostalgia? Do you like it to be fun? That's kind of what, the original was. And this also goes into a very interesting deal that when I did my research, I'm like, okay, this is something I should bring up. The author's reaction, Dahl's, on the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is very surprising, but at the same time, it is his work being basically created into a movie, so you kind of understand some of his reasons for saying this, but one of the things that definitely does mention here was that he disowned the film. The script was partially rewritten because he failed to meet the deadlines. So I guess he did have a hand in creating the movie, but unfortunately they had to find ways to fill in maybe some of the gaps because he did not meet the deadlines they were looking for. He thought that it focused a little too much on Willy Wonka and it's not enough emphasis on Charlie, which is weird. Because everybody's always said, well, the Willy Wonka version, it focuses more on Charlie, and the Charlie version, it focuses more on Willy Wonka. But I guess from the writer's point of view, it focused more on Willy Wonka than on Charlie. He was not happy about this conversation with Slugworth because they needed a villain in this. It wasn't one of those things where he was a villain, because in the end we find out he's actually working for Willy Wonka. It's one of those things where I like it because of the fact that it creates a conflict, and that's something you don't always see, because everything has to have, a good guy or a bad guy. There's never that many movies where it's more of like an interior, an inner struggle between good and bad. And this was, I think, one of those movies where it does emphasize on that quite a bit. Actually, in 1996, Dahl's second wife actually made some more comments about his objections, stating, and I quote, "They always want to change a book storyline. What makes Hollywood think children want the endings changed for a film when they accept it in a book?" You have to understand that's Hollywood. That's just how it is. It's never going to be one of those things where it's like, oh, we want this, where the writer wants this ending, where it's like, I think this is good, but we can do this ending and it would probably be more better. And it's not until you probably see it on the big screen where it's like, oh, I can understand why this is better. Or maybe they're that stubborn to be stuck in their ways where they're just like, you know what, I like the way I wrote it. I think it was better the way I wrote it. And they have the right to their opinion, and there's a lot of people that like it better, that they they like the book better. But why do they change it? Because it's Hollywood. It's how it is. There's nothing really to it. And I'll also comment on this, and then I want to definitely get some more thoughts, or even some thoughts on what I'm actually spewing right here. This actually comes from Gene Wilder, God rest the man's soul. He had some thoughts about the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory version. Is that he says that he actually chose not to see the film, and that the thing that put me off, ... I like Johnny Depp. I like him as an actor. I like him very much, But when I saw little pieces in the promotion of what he was doing, I said, I don't want to see the film because I don't want to be disappointed in him. So he had his mad respect for Johnny Depp, which I read this, and I think to myself, wow, Gene Wilder is honestly a better human being than I gave him credit for. And then when he was asked about the Tim Burton remake in 2013, this was his quote. He basically says, I think it's an insult. It's probably Warner Brothers' insult. Criticizing Burton. He basically said that I don't care for that director. He's a talented man, but I don't care for him doing stuff like he did. This is just a weird, this is like a weird chain of events where it's like, we have a great movie in Willy Wonka. Well, there's somebody chained out of there. Then there's somebody chained from the original Willy Wonka who goes after the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. How much you want to bet that somebody from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is going to go into this new remake of Willy Wonka just with some kind of comment? But we'll definitely talk about that a little later on. But what are your thoughts on a lot of these things that either the author has said or that what Gene Wilder has said?
Well, I think the person who I would take the most flack from would be the author, because this is his creation, this is his story. Roald Dahl obviously is a super famous author, American author. I believe American? I don't know. Is it British or is it American? I asked you that it was in Britain before.
He says he's British, but we'll say American for sake of argument, just for this time being.
I don't know. I want to know. I don't want to be wrong.
I'm wrong all the time.
I know, me too. But yeah, so he's super famous. He's definitely, I know, we definitely had to study him in class. That's how famous he was. Like, yes, people have to read Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But I think that I would take his criticisms to heart if I was doing a movie. Other than that, that's kind of all it is. I don't think I would ask Gene Wilder his opinions of someone else playing a character that he's almost known for. I feel like everybody who's seen Gene Wilder movies, I think Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is the one that everybody goes to. And I mean everybody, not people who watch all of his movies. Obviously, they'll have a favorite. But I mean someone who doesn't watch a bunch of Gene Wilder movies. I'm like, oh, Gene Wilder, you mean Willy Wonka. Like, you just know him. Like, oh, that's what he did. Oh, that's Willy Wonka. So to ask somebody who is literally, career-based, known for this character, hey, they're doing it again, and it's not you. I feel like that, I wouldn't ask that person that question. I would be like, did you like the movie? And if he said what he did, okay, I saw what he was doing and I didn't want to judge it, so I didn't go to see it, then I'd be like, all right, so you wouldn't like the movie. Next, we won't ask you again. I just think I would only take the author's notes, to heart, and that's all you can do. And I feel like if you don't take an author's note to heart, if you're basing anything off of a book, then you shouldn't have based it off the book if you're just going to take it and manhandle it and do whatever you want. And I think that's what some people do. And I think maybe the author has a little bit of say in the script, but all in all, I would think that the author signs off that allows their creativity to be used in something, and then you're like, they pray that they use it good. That's how that's what I kind of think happens. I don't know this for a fact, but you do see things that are left out in some of these books that are really key plot points. I can just, I don't know, a bunch of amazing movies that you see, Oscar movies, are based off of a book. And when they leave something out that you, as a reader, read and was like, this really is what made me love this book, you don't really like the movie. And then, like, I would say, if I asked the author about it, and they were like, yeah, they totally left out this huge storyline in my imagination world, I'd be very upset.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that. And, yeah, it does boil down to that. I think the main criticism does have to be with the author. But in the end, people, it's one of those things where they're basically going to say, like, oh, the author is just one person. Yeah, they created it, but we made it into something bigger. So, unfortunately, as much as we would love to, get the approval of the author, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's one person, whether a lot of people love it, so, they just kind of brush it off. And I really hate that happens, because, like you said, Dahl definitely deserves a lot of credit where credit is due. He did introduce us into the world of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and he definitely does deserve due credit for it. So this is where it gets to be interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because now we get to talk about the subject that I'm sure some of you have been looking forward to hearing, and that is indeed the new remake, reboot, not exactly sure. Some people have said it's like a prequel to what could be the next chapter in Willy Wonka or Charlie. Not sure which one it is, but the rumors that are going around right now is that they selected the actor who would play Willy Wonka, and that person being Danny Glover. Now, this is actually, what went down is that they actually had 3 actors selected for this. They had Danny Glover, who was the eventual person, Ryan Gosling, and Ezra Miller. A lot of people might know that we've talked about Ryan Gosling and Ezra Miller in past podcasts before. Ryan Gosling, definitely one of those guys who could definitely portray a serious role, and the thing is that with him, I couldn't really see him playing Willy Wonka because of the fact that I could see him being funny, but in more of a serious tone. I don't see him being kind of like the Gene Wilder, kind of charismatic, but also kind of the weird kind of funny that he kind of brought into it. It's just not one of those things where it's like, I could see him doing that. It just feels like that would be out of his zone, or not something that would fit him as an actor. Whereas Ezra Miller, we already mentioned, he did an awesome job as Flash. Thumbs up DC for that move. I don't know. With him, I don't think that he would have been the best one either, because I feel like with him, it would just be like Johnny Depp 2.0. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of its youth. Maybe it's because of how he acted comedically during Justice League. I don't know. It's one of those things. I'm not bashing the actors. I'm just saying that, from like a director standpoint, I would not see either one of them really fitting the role. With Danny Glover, I could definitely see him having that kind of charismatic style, the comedy, hit the punchlines well. I just see him fitting that bill better, but I don't know. Would you have changed anything, or do you think Danny Glover was probably a really good pick for this?
Let me make sure I know who I'm talking about.
He plays Lando in the new the Solo movie, but I think he was also in Spider-Man: Homecoming, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. For a second, I thought you were saying Danny Glover, and I was like,
No.
Hang on. So, are we talking about the black guy?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. So he's a comedian, a stand-up comedian, hilarious. They want him to be Willy Wonka.
That's the rumor that's going around, yes.
That'd be very interesting. But they're saying it's either him or Ezra Miller?
Well, it was a decision between him, Ezra Miller, and Ryan Gosling to play the role of Willy Wonka.
Interesting. I would think that I would really like Glover maybe out of all of them, because like you said, I agree. I think Ezra Miller would be Johnny Depp 2.0. Like, it would definitely. He's kind of weird. He's kind of a weird guy. And then Ryan Gosling. I don't know if I could, as Willy Wonka. Like, what, are they going to make his hair, like, super curly and weird or something? Because I don't think Willy Wonka's, like, don't put, like, someone who's super duper attractive in that role. I feel like that'd be weird.
I made a mistake. I don't know why I keep confusing these guys, but it's Donald Glover, not Danny Glover.
Okay, that's why. I'm like, okay. That would make sense. That is, yeah, Donald Glover. That's hilarious, though, that I was like, I'm like, he's really old. I don't know if he could do this role.
I got the first three letters right, okay? So give me some, give me something.
Sorry. But no, I think that Donald Glover's hilarious. He would have the perfect personality to do another Willy Wonka. Like, he's just ridiculous. And could laugh at himself and do all, like, the smile, like that really big, long smile. I feel like that's really Willy Wonka. That Johnny Depp had it, Gene Wilder had it. It'd be interesting, but they're trying to do another one. I don't understand. Why are they doing another one?
Well, see, that's the weird thing, is that I don't know if they're trying to do a continuation, or if it is a reboot, or if it's even just a prequel from what people have rumored that it's going to be. But, you have to remember that Hollywood runs out of ideas really fast, so they just decide, you know what, it's past this time, they're probably forgotten about it, let's recycle this storyline, let's make another one, let's just do it like this. Honestly, case in point could be Transformers for all we care. Because they were very popular, and then they brought them back, and then they were popular, and then they decided to fade off, and then they brought them back again, and then again, and then again. Sad, and I think, honestly, they could say the same thing about Batman and Superman, and, gosh, I dare even say Spider-Man. I really hate saying that because he's my boy, but I think he's one of those guys that fits in that realm of, we're bringing him for these movies, then he's gone. Bringing him back for a reboot, gone. Reboot, possibly gone. I just, I wish I understood Hollywood logic, but thankfully I don't, because I think that I would get more of a headache than I have right now.
Yeah, I don't like too many reboots. I'm the exact same as you. That's why I was like, I don't understand why they would make another one. Like, I think we're good. I don't think, and this could be. I'm just not that huge of a fan of the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory stuff. I think it was good, different story, thumbs up. But if you give me another one, I'm gonna start getting upset about it. Like, we got the old nostalgia version that you can't really touch, you can't really make fun of, you can't really do anything. It's good. Then you get the new one, the Tim Burton. That's a great way to go. Let Tim Burton do something with it, because it'll be weird and it'll be different. But if they do it again, it's like, no, we've had enough. I do not want another Willy Wonka every 10 years. I don't need it. The other movies can hold themselves. And it just shows that they're just going to try to prey on the fans. That's what I feel. That would be preying on the fans, and that's just wrong. I don't like it.
Yeah, well, I think we could definitely go into this in another podcast where we talk about, are reboots needed or are they not needed? And honestly, I think it'd be a good discussion. So I think with that, we will close this discussion of Willy Wonka, Charlie, and the Chocolate Factory. And honestly, this was a very, very good podcast. I love everything that went into this. I love the nostalgia feel. Love having these good memories. It just reminds us that childhood used to be good and childhood used to be amazing, and we had such incredible movies. Like we said, even in the 70s, this was a really good movie, and they're trying to outdo it. Just why? Yeah. But with that being said, guys, be sure to check out my lovely co-host Victory Bell on her Facebook fan page. Check out a lot of the stuff that she has going on, whether it's, modeling, whether it's just showing up for cosplay, or whether she's just going to be a goofy dork with her co-host, Mr. Rob Fury. Go check out also Bells of Fury as well. I know that was a great transition. I know, just so much professionalism there. Nothing but class here on the Game Changer. Of course, you can check me out on Twitter at The Real Effing Game, and also, guys, give us a like on our Facebook fan page. So with that being said, I think it's time that we say adios, goodbye. It was a scrumdiddlyumptious episode. Go find your gobstoppers. If you can find some kind of Wonka brand, cherish it, because somehow that was my childhood and I loved every single bit of it. So, with that being said, this is it for the Game Changer. This has been Victory Bell. I've been Nate the Effing Great. We will talk to you guys in the next episode. And just remember, we had Willy Wonka, we had Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and let's face it, they were not abominations like Tom and Jerry's Willy Wonka. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.